Turn it up. We're cutting through the noise. Big questions louder than your boy. This is the Savage Republic. Where the tough talk.
All right, so we're here with TikTok's That Intel Guy, or The Intel Guy. I apologize, is The Intel Guy. Not just that, you are The Intel Guy. And so now a lot of people in our audience, if they're on TikTok, they probably know you. They've probably seen your coverage, they've seen you on lives, or they've seen your content. But for those people who are on YouTube or people who haven't seen you, could feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am that Intel guy that many people affectionately call me the Intel guy. I pretend to know a lot, but basically, my background is in Marine Corps intelligence. Spent 10 years plus in the intelligence community through the Marine Corps, and I walked a pretty unique track. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but there's very few of us that were able to touch the various aspects of the intelligence community like I was. Primarily supporting Special Operations Command to include Joint Special Operations Command and the NSA, and then an occasional Marine Corps unit here and there to include the infantry. And so that was that allowed me to see the pretty much the entire aspect and apparatus of the intelligence community. And now, in my private sector life, I have been able to take my skill set of basically training analysts and apply that to civilians in Fortune 500 companies that want to build up their focus on physical security and threat deterrent, or threat awareness and deterrence.
Now, those that know the military, we shouldn't be judgmental, right? Like the Marine Corps intelligence is just as intelligent as the other intelligence services, right?
Correct.
I always figured I'd ask because I got a lot of Marine friends, and obviously there's the Crayola jokes and all that stuff. And I'm not, but as an intelligence guy, I'm not going to ask you your favorite color of crayon. I'm not going to ask you that. But I did, I've followed your content for quite some time on TikTok because it's always, you have a lot of opinionated stuff. You have a lot of very jaded stuff. You see left wing and right wing and stuff like that. But for you, it tends to very be centered on what's actually happening. And it doesn't seem like you pull any punches when it comes to left or the right. You just want to be accurate about what you're talking about.
For the most part, yeah. I think I really tried to keep, so like as you said, you followed me for a long time. So prior to this last election, I felt like I was doing that pretty well. And then I saw a lot of my peers that kind of do similar work, all very much slant their positions on purpose. Were basically anti-Republican. And so I felt kind of obligated to at least reveal that part that I'm pro-Republican, and here's why. And so a lot of my takes were slanted in that direction. And then ever since then, even though I feel like I ride the middle line, I still get called, so before the election, I used to be either called a Trump hater or a Biden lover or whatever, or vice versa. And now I'm just almost always, oh, you just support Trump or whatever. And I'm okay with that because the alternative was just too terrible, that we needed to have Trump. So.
But that's kind of the reality of the way it works on social media is if that somebody hears you say something they don't like or they don't agree with, you're obviously on the other side.
Yeah, obviously. And that's, I was getting that left and right. I still do to some extent, but if people think that I'm pretty much middle right, and so yeah, I'll definitely call Trump out or the Republicans for that matter, if something doesn't smell right. But that doesn't really happen too often. So.
No, that's a great way to look at it. And I have to ask you, so you went from an intelligence background, intelligence in the Marine Corps to social media. That's a hell of a switch. So I want to ask you a question that I bet a lot of people think about, but they probably don't have anybody in their life to ask the question. So like, what's something that the public, the general public, the TikTok consuming public generally misunderstands about global conflicts like what we're seeing right now?
Well, what we're seeing, well, yeah, especially from my TikTok lens or social media lens, that they're probably what they're saying is probably a lie. um, uh, I don't know about you, but most of the time I've noticed that a lot of the content is framed as America is losing or that we are actually very weak. and that America's never won a war. You hear that all the time, and every time you talk about military capabilities, they try to throw back in your face that, oh, it's just that's just Hollywood. And it really did take something like Trump and his um, take on the Don Rowe doctrine and his most recent effects on Venezuela, taking Maduro with that decapitation strike, for people to kind of wake up to the fact that no, we really are as good as we used to see Hollywood. And so that's kind of what people misunderstand when it comes to their viewpoint on social media.
Well, I mean, that's the reality is I think, like we see the United States in what are they, global war exercises and things like that. And don't we generally handicap ourselves in those?
All the time. I mean, there is zero reason for us to win our own war games. I mean, what are we just going to do? Have like a pat on the back? Great job, guys. No, they serve a real purpose, and that is to identify our gaps, our weaknesses in the simulations, so we can fill those gaps and improve our weaknesses. And that's the entire. We're not just playing games. They're called war games, but they're a very real tool to make ourselves better than our opponents.
And considering how and again, I don't mean this as an insult to the general public, but how uneducated the general public is on what's actually going on in war. Like, I know you see a ton of it. I can't imagine what your For You page looks like, but how much of what we see online, like about war and not just the current conflict, but about war in general, is real or manipulated? I'm not just talking about AI because that has become an absolute bear right now, but manipulated by the mainstream media as well.
Oh, yeah, no, that's I, so I had a very different answer to that question in my mind, because when I think about real versus manipulated, I still always go back to really what has happened over the last 10 plus years with regards to the information age, information warfare in general. A lot of people don't know this, but 10 plus years ago, the military made a huge shift to prioritizing information warfare. And so then you actually see that in real time again with the Venezuela, or sorry, not Venezuela, but the Midnight Hammer is a great example where they allowed people to see flight tracker radar, as people like to keep tracking our flights on that, as if that reveals anything. But the Pentagon actually used that in their benefit by making everybody think that our B-2 bombers were going one way, and then turning off the transponders, or rather, sorry, going to the encrypted networks and heading a complete other direction. And so, the media, they basically leveraged that, and the media spun an absolutely wrong direction for the rest of the populace on where we might be actually striking or when, and then out of the blue, they came over the horizon from a different direction altogether. So you have this combination of utilizing information warfare and the media manipulating all of that to the benefit of what we see online today, into what is really always this continuous turn of global conflict. But I'm not sure that really answers your question. But that's just where my mind went.
Well, I have to ask because I know I'm going to see this in the comment section of this video. Midnight Hammer. What is that?
Well, so that was the name of the operation that was for the strike on the Fordo nuclear facility back in, I think it was July or June of 2025, when Israel, and then Iran started their first 12-day war, and then the U.S. got involved and conducted an operation that we've actually been planning for like the last 15 years. um, uh, and we dropped these massive ordnance penetrator bombs from our B-2 aircraft. And the one thing I always like to point out about that strike is that they actually keyholed like one of the strikes, right? So they one penetrator hit a spot, blew a massive hole, and then right behind it came another massive a penetrator right down the same hole. And then on top of that, I think there were Tomahawks involved as well, launched from submarines, Ohio class submarines. So it was kind of a symphony of ordnance to destroy some of the nuclear facilities in Iran.
So we basically literally did what they talked about in Top Gun Maverick.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I don't now,
But
luckily, I don't think Tom Cruise was involved. I don't think he's tall enough to be a pilot in the real military. But we that's an amazing thing. And but see, those are the types of things that we don't actually hear about in the general public because the media doesn't want to they always seem to be avoiding glorifying war unless it's a conflict that doesn't involve us. Like they're perfectly fine cheerleading on the side for other conflicts, but it seems like when we get involved, our media does an amazing job of downplaying all of our success.
Yeah, and to the point of twisting it into almost a fear mongering message, like oh, America better watch out, our troops might be in danger. Oh dear, kind of like how dare we put them in danger, and as if the enemy they're facing is somehow superior or more dangerous than we are.
No, and I have to say, so I spoke with a senior former Air Force pilot, a former F-15, F-16 pilot, who said that that does play to benefit sometimes because, when the media is so unwilling to be honest about what's going on, that fog of war or the fog of information can actually play to our benefit sometimes. And I think you were talking about that with talking about, oh, coming over the horizon, they didn't even expect to see us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if there was a question there.
Oh, no, I was more just checking in to see if, the pilot was full of shit. Gotta be careful. You never know. These, when you're talking about the military, some people got stories. You gotta be like, hold on. But so I did want to ask you though. So now without revealing anything classified, because obviously you've worked in that field and I don't want you to get in trouble. I don't need anybody in black mask kicking down doors or anything. Uh, I don't think the average American understands how we actually get the intelligence we have. They just feel like we know it all. But how does intelligence actually get gathered in modern conflicts?
Yeah, so intelligence gathering is being conducted 24/7, 365. And I teach this to my college students and to the operators in Fortune 500 companies that also hire me to do this. And so this answer might be boring to everybody else, but I like it. I'm pretty excited by it. So this is all unclassified. Um, all of collection is started with the National Intelligence Priority Framework, and it's basically a really massive spreadsheet that covers everything the president really wants to know. Everything from terrorism to troop movements, military movements, basically you name it, and it's on this spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet gets sent out to all the combatant commands, from everyone has heard CENTCOM, but NORTHCOM gets all combatant get all the combatant commands get it. Cybercom, Transcom, and they all leverage their own collection capabilities along with their own commanders' intelligence priorities as well, which typically align with the NIPIF, what's called the NIPIF, and then they all apply their collection capabilities from troops on the ground, human, to all the way to the cameras they carry, to the aircraft that are specially designed to do that type of collection, to the satellites. Spacecom's a great example, and all of them feed into this collection apparatus through their various mechanisms that are available to them, and it answers the collection requirements that the president has outlined along with his commanders. And then all of that is used to dictate everything from policy to to effects on target.
And I got to tell you, I could not be more disappointed in the world to know that there's an Excel spreadsheet involved. It's like the minute
Yep.
I hear that is like as what I used to do in the military, and I look at it and I go, "Oh God, it involves Excel." I don't I don't want to participate in the intelligence world anymore.
Yeah, that's Excel's everywhere.
But I mean, and people would be surprised to know that the military. I don't know if we are. I know when I was in, even in 2012, we were still on Windows XP. So it's not like we're racing ahead. So Excel spreadsheets sound about right for the military.
Yeah, well, it's throughout the entire intelligence community. So yeah.
Now I have to ask. So obviously there's plenty of different avenues to draw this intelligence, plenty of different ways that we're doing it. How reliable is that intelligence when it comes in? Especially like in the early stages, say when a conflict starts.
Yeah, that's a great question because the answer varies, and it really depends on the conflict itself. You know, some conflicts it's actually quite reliable, and then other conflicts it's very unreliable. And really, there's a couple variables that determine that. And one is our collection capabilities. How good are they? And then the other is the deception tactics that our adversary may employ to avoid that collection. So you know, everybody always goes back to that video where you see the guy flipping the tank because it's an inflatable tank back in World War II. And I'm pretty sure North Korea has yeah, telephone poles that are oriented to look like artillery, right? And so the ability to discern what's real and what isn't really adds to the quality of that intelligence in the initial attack. And but basically, you have to confirm or deny assumptions to better provide proper effects on target. And so in this case, with regards to Epic Fury, it was extremely accurate. It was extremely effective. But you can obviously call back to other points in history where it's like, yeah, our collection, our intel sucked. Iraq might be an example. So
Well, you think about it, you see the videos online, or at least the pictures online, where they said, "Oh, the America fell for them painting planes on the runway," and it's like, I mean, those are obviously AI videos, but would a tactic like that work? Would a tactic like painting a plane outline on a runway, would American intelligence actually fall for that?
not in this day and age, absolutely not. Our intelligence capabilities are so advanced that we can tell, even if it looks perfect, it could look like a perfect you know, airplane on the runway, but we would be able through our own technology determine whether it's real or not, whether it's a decoy or not, and so we would never fall for that in this day and age.
No, that's wonderful to know. I mean, we always hear about the stories of like the CIA could tell you what the colors of your eye are while you're walking on a New York street, but somehow X and other social media makes it seem like we would fall for, the pebble looking like a bomb. And it's like that's just not reality. But I do have to ask, so even though we have all this technology, we have these different capabilities, how often, and obviously this isn't, I'm not holding you to this. This is obviously your opinion on this. How often do you think leaders, the US leaders, obviously foreign leaders are different. How often do you think US leaders are making decisions with incomplete or maybe just completely wrong information?
All the time, and you know, and that's both a good
That
and
doesn't
bad.
give me a huge vote of confidence when you say that.
Well, it's both a good and a bad thing, but it does depend on the decision that they're making with the intelligence that they do have, whether it's wrong or limited or none at all. Um, you know, you don't want to have a leader that is stuck in like analysis paralysis, where they can't make a decision because they just don't have all of the information. Right? That's exceptionally very deadly on the battlefield from a commander perspective. It can equally be um, a disaster from a presidential perspective if you'd have very long intelligence and you lead us into war. So that could also be the case. But it does happen all the time. But that doesn't mean there isn't an effort to try and get them the intelligence they need to make the correct step.
Yeah, so I mean, when I say incomplete, I obviously mean everything's always an evolving situation when it comes to intelligence. You're working with the best information you have, and so for my next question, it's the person who's actually processing that information, or at least from the standpoint of the way most Americans think, is Tulsi Gabbard, right, Director of National Intelligence. We feel she should be at the center of things, and I got to ask, you don't have to rate her a 1 out of 10, but how do you think our director of national intelligence is doing?
You know, I think it's probably not going to be a favorite answer. I think she's doing a fine job. Um, she's doing a fine job with what she's given. So she went into that position. Everybody already knows her position, complete anti-war. Um, but she wants to. I'm assuming she wants to stay in that position because she wants to be that contrarian voice when it counts, and she probably uses that voice when she knows she's able to, and then she also is very silent when she knows she's said her piece and nobody's listening. So, and that's really honestly her role at the end of the day is to provide all the information she thinks the president needs and to make an effective decision. Um, and I think the interpretation of that data is probably what people are splitting hairs on. But I'm okay with the contrarian voice so long as the right person's in the position to make the right call.
No, and I think that's a wonderful part of this administration is that you have people who very obviously we know that Tulsi, she is completely opposed to pretty much any conflict unless we're directly attacked. She's opposed to it, and that's why when I saw her appointment as director of national intelligence, I was actually really excited because I was like, okay, what we're doing is we're taking somebody who we know is 100% opposed to us getting involved in things, and we are giving her every bit of intelligence in the world. Basically, we basically have armed the most opposition person to talk as much shit as possible and put her in a position where we have to listen to her. And I think that's a wonderful that was a great step by Trump to have somebody who was gonna, mediate his thought process on things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that she's able to stay there and thread that needle because I think she recognizes that even though she might be against war and even against this war, which I mean, obviously she hasn't said as much, but she did in the past. Um, it's that I'm hoping at this point she doesn't let that her past paralyze her from future decisions, if that makes sense. Because you have other people, most notably Joe Kent, who just resigned, who is allowing his past trauma uh, paralyze his frame of mind on the current situation on the ground, and he would be making really bad decisions.
Well, and I love that you brought up Joe Kent because he's obviously a topic from an intelligence perspective and from we'll just say a social media perspective right now. Now, I've seen you've been critical of Joe Kent and especially his Iraq war comparisons, as well as his choice word, what we'll call it choice wording when it comes to not being allowed to investigate, or at least he claims not being allowed to investigate the Charlie Kirk murder. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on him and the positions that he's taken since uh, he, it's a resignation, but since then.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been trying to discern why he resigned. Everybody's been floating all these different ideas, and I felt like I got the best complete answer after watching his interview on Breaking Points. All the other ones were, Tucker, Candace, they're just complete garbage. But his interview with Breaking Points was very revealing about his thought process, and so I personally believe that he did this because he wants to be a politician. He's tried twice, failed twice. Maybe this is third time's a charm. There's also the canary trap aspect of it that maybe he got forced out due to them suspecting that he was leaking to the likes of Tucker and Candace. Um, and and the reason and so there's all those things, but one of the things I'm really critical about, which is what I kind of highlighted with Tulsi to an extent, is Joe Kent was recently giving a speech at a prayer breakfast, and he made this classic politician statement that I won't send America's young youth to fight in foreign wars. Well, newsflash, almost all of our wars have been foreign, and you have to be able to make that difficult decision, and you are trying to align your own experience in Iraq to frame your decision to never ever go to war, to a foreign war again. Like I can't have a leader be in that position where he's going to sacrifice or endanger our own national security because he doesn't want to do the hard thing, which is to basically conduct warfare when nothing else is available.
Well, and to go off what you said, I think it's very obvious that he's setting himself up for a political run. Like that is what's very obvious in his future. Because I mean, he's pretty much burned the bridge in the intelligence sector. Like once you come out and talk shit on the intelligence field, you're not really doing anything in that field. But so I think he's very much setting himself up for a political run. But I actually did want to address a little new piece of information we got over the last couple of days, where you had the interview with Mitch Snow. They interviewed Mitch Snow, and he confirmed that the person, the Candace, uh,
That
uh,
crazy guy.
yeah, the crazy guy, exactly, that she raised
Wow.
$100,000+ from.
Right.
He actually publicly stated and has now said on multiple interviews that his vetting for Candace, for her to believe him, was done by Joe Kent.
Well, that guy is a notable liar and opportunist. Yeah, I'm here for that. Good. Uh, do that.
No, no, no.
Hey,
And I
okay.
just and I want to be clear. Just want to be clear. I am not in any way believing anything that comes out of Mitch Snow's mouth. But when he was asked, he said, somebody asked him, "Were you vetted?" And he said, he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I kind of put that out there. I didn't. I maybe I shouldn't have, but yeah, my vetting was done by Joe Kent. My information was sent to him. I had to give him information, and then he was the one that told Candace I was good."
Yeah, so that's honestly not how that would work. I highly doubt Joe Kent would facilitate such a request. But I'm here for that drama. I love that for them. Because but that is just ridiculous. I know, not that I want to defend Joe Kent, but I know for a fact he would never do that. It would be the most strangest thing to walk into your office as a director and hand this over to an analyst to say, "Hey, vet this American," right? That's not
No, no,
that's not how that.
I completely agree. I completely
Yeah,
agree. But like you said, I'm here for the drama of it.
yep, absolutely.
Now I do want to get to, let's get to the new self-described global superpower that is Iran, as they've called themselves. And I imagine you have some feelings about that self-description of Iran.
Well, I think it's laughable. Their state media came out just the other night and said that they will be recognized as a global superpower and that they will be in pursuit of a nuclear weapon, and they will either build it or acquire it. Was basically the quote. And you kind of have to have a functioning military and the ability to project power to actually be considered a global superpower, to include having a nuclear arsenal. So are they admitting to that they have it, that they're going to get it very soon? Because all they're doing is showing the world exactly why this Operation Epic Fury needs to happen.
Now, if they were going to look now, in relation to that, because obviously they're not going to build one. Yeah, everywhere they have to build anything has already exploded or has been imploded in some way. But if they were to look, let's just say they were to go shopping for a weapon of that sort. Like I look at their what we can functionally call their allies. Like you have Russia, we hit Iran. 6 hours later, Putin gives $1 billion to Trump's peace initiative. So I don't think he's looking to be involved, and I don't think China's looking to be involved either. But who would you think, like if Iran was going to look for friends, and obviously they've already bombed just about everybody in the Middle East, so they don't have any there. Who would they look to? Would it be Russia? Would it be China? Would it be somebody we haven't thought of?
Well, it won't be Pakistan because they have a security agreement with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is about to attack Iran if they're not careful. And then, so the other one would be North Korea. Kim Jong Un has, I think, voiced that he would actually give them one. The key thing there, though, and this is actually an indictment on the intelligence community, is we've never actually seen North Korea have a nuclear weapon. We've detected their detonations twice underground, but from that and only that, we have now determined that they must have at least 32 nuclear warheads. There's no other evidence to support this statement, mind you. It's, I'm of a mind that they actually don't have one, but if they did, they'd probably ship it over to Iran. So
Now is this the failures in the intelligence community we talked about, where we go from 2 underground detonations to 32 nukes? This is like when we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and tried to make Japan imagine that we had a full arsenal of these, or do you see that thought process as a logical leap or more of a hysterical?
well, it's kind of both. So that the World War II thing was not just a message to Japan, but it was also to Russia because they were about to invade Manchuria. But um, with North Korea, uh, our analysts, in absence of any other information, will write the worst case scenario as almost a fact, and so they they will through
I
science.
think we have found the reason that we keep intel analysts off the news.
Probably.
Please
But
go on.
well, so in this particular instance, because we had no other evidence to support what their capabilities are, we did discern through the scientific method on what it would take to cause these two massive basically, minor earthquakes. And from that, we then extrapolate. Well, what would it if we go along the theory that was an encased nuke? Um, what what would it take for them to develop one or more? And then, based off of what we already knew as far as their ability to enrich uranium, we then discern, okay, well, they must have at least a dozen of these. Like that's basically how that went.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Going back to Iran. I've heard you talk about, because obviously you are definitely all over my For You page and I follow your content. I've heard you talk about the mosaic strategy, right? That's a term I've heard you bring up, as watching your videos, I do have an understanding of it, but I feel like that's something that I think the general public would benefit from understanding better.
Yeah, so Iran operates with what's called the Mosaic strategy or Mosaic defense, and it was rolled out in the early 2000s. I want to say that they've learned their lessons from other friendly nations of theirs, where they have a high command, high control function, and it basically paralyzes the troops on the ground, or in the regional sectors where they don't do anything unless higher headquarters says to do something. And so they asked the question, well, what happens when we can't talk to higher headquarters? And so they came up with the Mosaic strategy, which is a decentralized command, layered defense type of approach to the different sectors in Iran, where if they lose control, or sorry, lose command with lose communication with command at higher headquarters, say in Tehran, they already have a predetermined strategy as far as military action is concerned. Now, the problem with their Mosaic strategy was basically attack everyone. and, and, and so they thought that if they could attack everyone, that, and I say everyone, I mean their neighbors, that their neighbors would actually turn and be angry at the U.S. for doing this and start, telling the U.S. to get your people, get your bases out of our country. How dare you put us in danger? But the IRGC started attacking their civilian populations in these other countries, and so now these countries are like, "What did we do? Like, we didn't do anything to you." And so now they're getting mad at the IRGC and basically saying, "Hey, if you don't cut this crap of attacking our civilian infrastructure of people, we're going to start attacking you." So it's completely backfired.
And that's exactly what you were talking about when it comes to a country like Saudi Arabia, right? Like they probably would have played like Switzerland and stayed out of it for the most part. But because they've been on the receiving end of Iranian missiles, it's kind of backfired, right?
Oh yeah, it's backfired masterfully because Saudi Arabia has a massive air force, and they at least are vocalizing assurances that Pakistan will also get involved, and Pakistan hasn't said one way or the other at this point, and so that silence is kind of deafening to the IRGC as well. And all of the attacks that the IRGC have done, they've been attacking their neighbors more than they've attacked Israel. When you look at the entire all the launches of all their drones and ballistic missiles, the majority have gone to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Oman and Bahrain. And Oman is like the worst. They haven't gotten the most, but Oman's like the Switzerland of that area, if you will. They are completely peaceful. They have hosted so many talks of deterrence and diplomacy, and yet they're getting attacked all the time. They're like, "What did we do?" So, but yeah.
So their mosaic strategy has backfired pretty hard, which look, I gotta say, I always hope the worst for Iran, or at least the IRGC. I don't hope the worst for the Iranian people. But okay, so
Right.
now as far as Iran goes, let's talk about their for better lack of a term, their trump card, the Strait of Hormuz. So, they've said that they're determined to hold up the Strait of Hormuz, and that's kind of what they're going with. But Trump's newest threat was, I believe it was a 48-hour clock. Open the strait or else. And what are your thoughts on his strategy there, or Iran's ability to hold it?
Well, Trump's or else was to attack their power plants at this point, and Trump's very much almost a total war kind of person, or at least he comes off that way. And I think that's part of his strategy is he's constantly throwing in confusion because 12 hours before that announcement, he was saying, "Well, we might pull out. We don't really care." And so he's just constantly throwing all this confusion, and nobody knows exactly how to plan for it. And that's kind of the idea with regards to the Strait of Hormuz being closed, it is being closed pretty easily, and that was, I think, a little surprising by a lot of people because in all of our plans include the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So that wasn't something we missed. That just wasn't the highest priority. Um, but what is kind of surprising is how just by sheer announcement that ships will just not go and insurance companies just won't insure them. And so now we're like, oh crap, like people aren't calling their bluff, even though we've completely decimated Ketchum Island, which is that big island that sits in the strait, and we've like completely destroyed their navy. Everybody's still too afraid, and so they want reassurances, and we have to be able to provide that. How we provide that, Trump is trying to harness the kind of a coalition of the willing, which there's been a lot of positive voices in that direction, but not a lot of movement or action. And so, I think that the strait has to be secured and has to be opened for this to be basically a victory, if for lack of a better term.
No,
But yeah, I can
I
keep
do-
monologuing. Or what else?
no, you're good. You're good. So on that point, like, so do you think what's occurring as far as the delays or the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, do you think that's more based upon Iran's ability to militarily hold that or military threaten ships, or more based upon inaction from, as you said, insurance companies and shipping companies that are just not willing to risk it?
Well, I think it's based on those two things, and then to include a lack of assurance from, I mean, honestly, the U.S. because we have the Fifth Fleet's base is in Bahrain. We should be sailing the Strait of Hormuz now. We should be combing it for mines now, and we haven't really done that yet. And so we're not giving a lot of, even though we're dropping a ton of ordnance and destroying targets left and right, we're not providing that final assurance to the civilian sector, to the commercial sector, that yes, you can actually navigate this strait. Look at us, we're doing it now. And in fact, why don't you come with us? We'll protect you. That just hasn't occurred yet.
And
So,
do you have an opinion on why that hasn't occurred?
um, I think it's because it's still low on the priority. I think when the military planners, to include the strategists in Trump's administration, they actually, you closing the strait and its effect on the global economy, they are putting it into their planning that's acceptable, and we're already seeing that play out across the global economy as a lot of people, the International Energy Agency released a historic amount of oil to compensate. You have other countries releasing a historic amount of their own reserves to compensate. They're telling their people, "Hey, go to a 4-day work week." A lot of countries across the globe are doing that. There's a lot of flexibility built into the current crisis that allows us to further strain the IRGC and utilize our military resources to still focus primarily on targets on the ground and not have to worry about securing the Strait of Hormuz yet, because we are not at that stage yet, if that makes sense. We will be very soon. We have 2 Marine expeditionary units coming in, and they will be definitely securing Karg Island, which is beyond the straits, but they might even provide an element of securing the actual strait itself. So,
I mean I mean that's because that's what a lot of people's thought process is when they look at it. Like they ignore what we've done in Iran. They just look at the strait and say, okay, well, people can't pass through it. Obviously, everything's going to shit. But I mean, that's just not a reality. It's obviously, like you said, it's not high on our priority list. The high on our priority list is removing the IRGC from power, removing their ability to create weapons, and removing their ability to do what they've already done to a lot of their people. And so I have to say, so like obviously, you look at it in a way of what we've done and what we're looking at forward. How do you see this being resolved? Because obviously it's not going to result like the United States isn't going to have, the 51st state of Iran. It's not going to end up, it's not going to be the state of Israel. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But we're also not going to have, Israel isn't going to get new land out of this. So it's not like, how do you actually see this being resolved? And like, what long term effects do you see with destabilizing a power like that in the region?
well, there's a multitude of answers to that question, and so I'll try and break it down to maybe two or three hypotheticals. Of course, there is the most positive, altruistic hypothetical that the IRGC collapses and or capitulates, and we're able to place in an interim leader, Raza Pahlavi, the Iranian crown prince exiled, currently living in Maryland. And he ushers in elections to a new democratic, type of government. That's the rosy, perfect picture outcome that everybody hopes for. And is it possible? Sure, but I'm not going to provide any kind of percentages of that possibility. I'm going to say, oh yeah, it's highly likely. I don't know. It's definitely it's a possible outcome. But another possible outcome would be a destabilized region that is broken up with different stakeholders, different interests, different tribes. You have the Iranian Kurds are a prime example of that. The Kurdistan, the state that's not a state that spreads across Iran to Syria. And then you have political factions that exist in Iran that are actually worse than the IRGC, and we want to watch out for them. They're called the MEK, MEK. They are actually worse, and so we definitely don't want to see them gain any kind of power. And so you could see a region of that's completely destabilized, where maybe even a global kind of coalition force, whether it's Trump's Board of Peace, or whether it's the UN, or whether it's led by the US or some other country, to actually even secure the Strait of Hormuz as almost a an international controlled waterway, right? That doesn't really necessarily have maybe it temporarily doesn't actually have borders with regards to Iran sovereignty. Why? Because maybe they won't have a government at the time. So there's a lot of different ways this could come out. There's even the worst case, and in this instance, the worst case is that the IRGC stays in power, and Trump still calls it a victory. And why is that? Because people need to go back to his original statement, his 8-minute speech, to include what's currently on the Pentagon website of what our objectives are. And our objectives do not include a regime change or a securing of fissile material. It just simply says that we will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and that we will take out their navy, their ballistic missiles, and their capabilities. That is it. So if we do those minimum things, but the IRGC somehow still stays in power, we'll still technically call that a victory. Now, what follows that with regards to, okay, well, the IRGC is not done, so they're going to continue to, harass the Strait of Hormuz. That then comes, okay, well, what do we do? And now we're back to the question of, okay, even if we declare the war over, we're still going to have to make sure that this is a secure waterway, and it's going to require boots on the ground. So,
And I have to say, like, I look at your worst case scenario, I look at that and I go, that's so equivalent to the mission accomplished under Bush. Right. And I know how hard that's been ridiculed over time. And honestly, when it comes to this, I'm not in any way, I not in any way care about Trump's legacy when it comes to this. To me, it's about the Iranian people, stability in the region, and stability for, I believe, where 70% of the world gets its oil. And so, I mean, your worst case scenario, the horrible, huh?
20%.
What I say? Oh no, I apologize. We're 20%. My bad. But my point is that, like, the idea that could be a scenario, and I mean, I honestly think politically, coming from a politically minded person, that would be, you'd be better off to have everything blow up than have that actually happen. Like, just being real with you, because that's political suicide. When you put service members' lives on the line, when you spend billions of dollars to do something and it's a fake mission accomplished, it's a fake victory, that's worse than losing to most people.
And that's the sad commentary on American society and our ability to actually understand what's going on, really, because that Bush's little mission accomplished and how that he was raked over the coals for years for that. Okay, valid. Because honestly, I still have the mind that we should never have gone to Iraq in the first place, and his mission accomplished was we removed the government and took over the country. Now comes the next 10 years, right? So like they're like, how's it mission accomplished when there's 10 years there? But with regards to Trump's potential mission accomplished, that is actually more important and more real, because I think what people don't understand is that the IRGC is absolutely hell bent on getting a nuclear weapon. And what do you do when you when they do get that nuclear weapon, but it's too late to stop them. Do you know what I mean? This was really important, and I think you're right. It could be potential political suicide for one political party, but I think it's worth it to push to still kick that can down the road much further than the JCPOA ever could have. We basically this is basically what's called mowing the grass strategy, and where we come back every few years and knock them down a peg. We've knocked them down to the nub, and so it's going to take them a decade or more, maybe 15 years to get back to where they were versus where they wanted to be. That's a whole nother like 15, 20 years away. So at the very least, he has pushed off this potential inevitability of them getting nuclear weapon, because what people don't understand is they're going to use it. Like that's baked into their entire strategy. And they wanted to build up a large enough ballistic missile defense that we wouldn't be able to stop them. So, I mean, look how hard even though we're really effective, this was still really hard to do. And they were really weak. Imagine if they weren't weak. Imagine if they were really strong now. This, this would have been almost impossible to do. So it's really important that we ensure they never get a nuclear weapon. That much is true.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I look at it where you have your worst case as far as the IRGC staying in power. And while I think you're right that the United States would possibly politically allow that to happen, I think our partner in this war, they wouldn't go for that.
Right, they wouldn't, and that's why they keep doing everything they can to ensure that it never happens. But at some point, they're going to lose, and I think that's why that's all this went into the calculus of starting Operation Epic Fury. And I think for whatever reason, the Tulsi Gabbards and now the Joe Kents of the world seem to think that the IRGC are rational actors, and they only want to nuke for regime survivability. Except it's baked into their entire operational plan. They've voiced the fact that they will that Israel is a one nuke country, meaning all it takes is right. And they if they hadn't done everything else with regards to their proxy groups, October 7th, if the Houthis, if they hadn't done all those other things, then the Joe Kents of the world would have a valid argument, I think. But because they've done all of these things, like when somebody tells you who they are, you need to believe them.
And that's one of the things I see that so many people get wrong is they have this flowery thought process of the Iranian government of like, oh, well, they would never do this or they would never do this. And it's like, all you really have to do is listen to them. Like when like I used to do relationship content back in the day, and I've always told the number one rule is when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And
Yeah,
that's what I see with Iran is they repeatedly tell us that they are batshit crazy and bent on destruction of Israel, and and sadly we see in America today that I think a large amount of the population very much undervalues the benefit of having Israel as an ally there. But again, it's like you said, if they have a nuclear weapon, they're going to use it. It's not just going to sit on the shelf.
right. And then let's go down the hypothetical that they don't use it. Look at what they're doing right now when they are or when they're 90% degraded to almost nothing, and they're able to affect the global energy supply market to this level, where governments are having to shorten their work week, where a historic opening of reserve oil is having to occur simply because they're threatening to close it. Now imagine if they had a nuke at a full arsenal. And now they're basically dictating terms to the whole world, holding the whole world's energy pricing hostage, right? They could also do that, and so why would we allow them that capability? That's too dangerous because the argument is, well, why do we care about Israel? That's Israel's war. That's over there. That's not over here. Well, look at what it's doing now, and they're as weak as possible. Imagine if they were super strong, we wouldn't be able to stop them. They'd hold the whole world hostage.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing people don't realize is we are dealing with a weak Iran. And in their heads, they're like, oh, well, they were only able to do this because they're so powerful. And it's like even though they call themselves a global superpower, like, let's be real, they're not even a regional power by the time we were dealing with them. And we benefited from that greatly. Don't get me wrong. I'm so happy they were weak when we hit them. But the reality is that I don't think the American people want to would want to live in a world where Iran is strong enough to dictate terms to the rest of the world.
Right, but I just also feel like they're not seeing that, right? Because right now, what do you see across social media? Look at my gas prices. Look, energy's going through the roof. Everything's going to raise prices. Trump did that, right? It's this constant like, how dare he do this? It's like, well, that was definitely going to happen if you allowed them to stay in power and get the nuke that they've always wanted, and it would have been much worse, right? It would have been their time to say, hey, in fact, we don't we want every country that navigates their oil through the Strait of Hormuz to get off the petrodollar and start actually reducing our national security through the dollar, through the reserve currency, right? So it's just people don't understand like the how the world is connected, and that this modicum of pain we're going through is worth what could have been otherwise a much worse situation.
I couldn't agree more. Now, and I have to say, like, so obviously that's your evaluation on what's currently going on, what could possibly be the scenarios going forward. What do you think, as a intelligence professional, as somebody who digs into these things on a daily basis, what and again, no half the people will listen, half the people won't. What should social media, or at least watchers of social media, be paying attention to? Not the people, but what should they be looking for as indicators that this is going in the right direction, or indicators that it's going in the wrong direction?
Um, that's a wow, that's a really great question. Well, because right now it's a very fluid situation, and if you listen to just the media, both social media and mainstream media, you would think that this has all gone in the wrong direction. And so I think the best advice there is the classic advice of don't don't listen to them. Go to the source material, right? Go to Pentagon.gov, go to CENTCOM, go you're basically gonna have to dig into source material to find out like what's really happening. Um
Now I gotta say,
yeah,
you work on social media too, so we people aren't going to do that, right? Like
right.
they're not going to do that. So what, like, because I mean, in all honesty, like, are people just gonna have to kind of live in ignorancy for a little bit, or is there something they can do? I mean, obviously listening to you, but that sounds like a self pitch right there. It sounds like you're, oh, you know what people should do? They should listen to me, right? Like that. That's a crazy thing
Yeah.
to say, right? But actually,
Right.
here's a better question. What what sources should they avoid to avoid being drawn into the stupid lanes of misinformation?
Well, that still invites a an answer that nobody likes. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still going to require a lot of self discipline that they're not going to exercise. Right? They're going to need to look at primary sources. They're that, or they're going to have to watch both sides of the news. I mean, ground news is a great example of at least providing all of it for you. But we're really in a world where the individual person is, if they care to not live in a bubble or a biased lane, it's up to them to break out of it. So it just, yeah, it's never going to happen.
I feel like we're acting. I feel like we're asking drug addicts, like, "Yo, just stop taking drugs," right? Like they're just
No,
not going to do it. So, I mean, sadly, we really do live in a world where, like, people like you who understand what they're looking at and know the sources to go to and are willing to do the work. I mean, you're in a position where you have to spoon feed people.
yeah, pretty much. I'm just glad that I'm able to rely on my own credibility, my own experience, my own professionalism, and then finding the sources that actually are speaking the truth for those and really through my commentary for them to kind of understand the world that it really exists versus what they're being told anywhere else.
So they shouldn't
So,
run off to, what is it, Doctor Zhang or whatever for information, right?
oh,
Doctor.
Christ. For pretend Professor Zhang, like
Yes.
he is the Peter Zahan of China. uh, both these men, Peter Zahan is very famous for being in my field and getting everything wrong all the time. Um, and it's because people don't understand what it takes to conduct analysis. I'm going to go on a tangent here to kind of drive back to the point. So, So Peter Zahan, if people Google him, they'll see, he's been living in geopolitical space for his entire career, and he got famous because in one of his books he predicted that down to the year and the month that Russia was going to invade um, Ukraine for the second time in 2022. And the reason why he got that right, though, was for all the wrong all his wrong reasoning. And so he got a lot of speaking gigs. He got a huge following, and everybody listens to everything he says, and he's always consistently wrong. Yeah. So he's a really great storyteller. He tells you all the historical facts, and then when it comes to predictive analysis, he just punts it every time. And the reason for that is because an analysis isn't just what I think is going to happen, right? There's actual metrics behind it. There's actual tools, and an analysis is a process. It's not just what I think based off what I'm hearing, and he doesn't do that. And so Professor Zhang does the same thing. And he's from China. He has absolutely zero background in geopolitics. He has a bachelor's in English, and he teaches at a private school in Beijing. And they call him professor. And he got his stuff's on YouTube, and so he made 3 grand predictions, and 2 of them already come true. And everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" And it's like, well, yeah, he made very easy predictions. Trump was going to win, and Trump was going to attack Iran. Trump's been saying he was going to attack Iran for a long freaking time. For like 40 years, he's been saying this. And so it wasn't hard to predict that. His third prediction is that the U.S. is going to lose, and Iran is going to take over, and China is going to become the new hegemonic world power, and America is going to retreat from the Middle East, and Iran's going to dictate everything with their buddy China. And I'm like, what? No. And so I've spent the last many weeks dispelling all his BS through my TikToks, and there's a few of them out there for people to see.
No, it's completely understandable. Like I said, and like you said, they're going off the fact that he got something right. He got a couple of things right, but he got very obvious things right. It's like let's be real. Trump running against Kamala Harris and Trump winning. Yeah, that was hard to predict, and Trump attacking Iran. Oh, wow. I never thought that would happen. That's crazy talk. Right. So but he's basing it off the third thing. It's like over the last 10 years, you said that the Kansas City Chiefs would win the Super Bowl, and because they won, now everybody thinks you're the perfect NFL predictor. It's like that's not how reality works. You don't get to say one easy thing and then go, "Oh yeah, now this crazy shit I said is going to happen."
Right. And the weird thing is, it goes back to how people perceive the U.S. Americans that perceive the U.S. as if we're like some fickle, weak country that's ready to break. Like it couldn't be further from the truth. We're the strongest, most dynamic, most capable country on the planet. And it's proven every day. And there's a reason why these countries in the Gulf countries, keep our bases in their country is because of, honestly, it's because of money and on top of capability, right? But like, they like money, and they know that we bring stability, even if we have to go through a few bumps in the road with what we're going through with the IRGC right now. But like, Zhang's whole premise is that the IRGC is going to be able to close the strait, control the strait, and all these countries are going to turn on the U.S., and the U.S. is going to be forced to retreat. I'm like, what? We've been there for 50 plus years. Why would we leave?
No, and let's be real. The United States military might as well be OCD about war. We don't just leave. That's just not how we roll. Unless, of course, we elect a Democrat, and then we manage to just leave places like morons. But and do it in the worst way possible. But so,
Yep.
but I really do appreciate your input on what we should be looking at. And look, I really hope that your worst case scenario is just you being completely and utterly insane, because I would lose my mind. Like, people have no idea how much I would lose my mind if that actually was the result. So I'm hopefully more leaning towards your best case scenario, although it's politics, so that never happens. So I'll settle for something in the middle. But so when people are looking for analysis on this, where can they find you? Because obviously I know you from TikTok. But are there other channels, or are there other things that you regularly participate in that people could find you and be able to dig into your analysis a little more?
Yeah, so they can find me on YouTube, same name, and X, same name. I also am on IG sometimes. It's also the same name, but with an underscore at the end. I'm gonna be, probably, if I find time, starting up a Substack where they can actually find that deep analysis. But yeah, those definitely YouTube, definitely X, and definitely TikTok.
All right. I mean, look, that they'll come find you. The Instagram, some of the time, believe me, I know that feeling. For some reason, Instagram is just I don't know. It's just I'm allergic to it. I'm just never on that platform. But I don't know if it just sucks or I just don't like it. But I feel you on that. But yeah, so we'll send people over though. Obviously, we're gonna and guys, if you want to follow, that Intel guy, we will have all of his contact information as well as links to everything he does on social media. Is there anything you want to leave people with? Anything you want to let them know other than that Professor Zhang sucks?
Um, no, actually, I think you've rounded out quite well. Don't believe everything you see in the media, the classic old adage, and certainly hope everybody has a good day.
Same here, same here. But it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Pleasure.
Turn it up. We're cutting through the noise. Big questions louder than your boy. This is the Savage Republic, where the tough talk